Hey guys, Bartel's Bookshelf here with another haul video. Yes, I know. I haven't done a haul video in a while. I've been trying to hold off, and I've been doing pretty well. But today, me and my friends Nikia at Plot Twist and Laura went to this place called the Book Den, which I'd never been to before. They basically keep a bunch of books here that they that eventually go on to be sold at libraries, but you can buy them directly from the warehouse in here. So there's two sections. There's like a front section with a bunch of books, a little more like nicely laid out and organized, and then there's the back section, which is just this massive warehouse full of books. And basically nothing in this warehouse is over, I think, $4. Most of these paperbacks I got for about $2, $1 to $2 each. So it was very dangerous. I think I got everything I got from there for about $12. And then we went to Beer's Books, which I've mentioned in some previous vlogs, and I bought a few more things there. So I figured if I'm going to be gaining all these books, I might as well make content out of it like I always do. So let's get started. I bought some more Harry Turtledove books. The first one is The Guns of the South. I don't think I've talked about Harry Turtledove on this channel, but he's a alternate history author, kind of the preeminent alternate history author. I'm currently reading the first book in his Southern Victory series, How Few Remain, and this is a similar premise. It's an alternate history about the South winning the Civil War, but that win is predicated upon, as you can see there, a white supremacist group from the future brings AK-47s and like modern machine guns to the South, and that basically enables them to win the war. But then they start to butt heads because they both disagree on what the Confederacy should look like. Based on what I've read of How Few Remain, I get the feeling this will be very well researched and very interesting. And that just sounds like a bananas concept. I mean, that just sounds completely crazy and ridiculous and a lot of fun. So I grabbed it. It was $1. So the second Harry Turtledove I got was this one. This is Atlantis and Other Places. This is a book of short stories of alternate history that have things like Audubon and Atlantis, which is about the famous naturalist who embarks on a quest for a near-extinct species of bird found only on the rarest of lands. The Catcher in the Rhine, a young American on a European holiday finds himself storming an enchanted German castle. They just sound very diverse and very interesting, and I like Harry Turtledove's style. It's very straightforward, but very well researched and fun to read, very pleasant. So yeah, looking forward to that. Next I have the classic Prisoner of Zenda by Anthony Hope. As I mentioned in my Autumn Amour video, I plan to read The Henchman of Zenda by K.J. Charles, which is a gay sort of retelling of this. It was at the bookstore. It was cheap. I was meaning to read it anyway to prepare for Autumn Amour, and it's only about 190 pages. So why not? It was there. So this one looked like a lot of fun. The Reluctant King by L. Sprague de Camp. This is a collection of 3 short novels, I believe. So previously published in 3 volumes as The Goblin Tower from 1968, The Clocks of Yaraz from 1971, and The Unbeheaded King from 1983. I've heard of L. Sprague de Camp, obviously. He's a pretty famous fantasy writer. He wrote a lot of sword and sorcery stuff, including Conan the Barbarian novels and stories, some of which he edited from Howard's originals, which people have mixed feelings on, which I understand. But as I mentioned in my previous videos, I've been in the mood for for just sort of like straight up traditional fantasy, and this just sounded really fun based on the concept. It's about the king of this kingdom named Xylar, and this kingdom has a law that decrees that each randomly chosen king must reign for only 5 years, and then after due pomp and ceremony have his head cut off. And the current king, King Jorian, obviously doesn't want that, so he goes on the lam, but he ends up leaving his wife behind, and so he has to return to Xylar to get her out of there. So it sounds really entertaining, sort of a mischievous, reluctant king, sort of going on a rescue mission to save his wife from this country that wants to behead him. It just sounds really fun and entertaining. It mentions things on the back like there's a princess who turns into a giant serpent, pirate sieges, there's giant clock towers. It just sounds really adventurous and fun and entertaining. I enjoy these old paperbacks from Baen Books. They just have this very, like, the painted covers, the bold text. It's just very, like, I love the vibe of these old Baen book covers. Next I have book 1 in the Shamer Chronicles. This is The Shamer's Daughter by Lene Kaaberbol. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. I believe she's a Dutch author, Dutch or German, something like that. And this is a sort of a children's fantasy series that was recommended to me by Nikia. She actually said this is one of her favorite books, and it sounds really interesting. It's about a girl, the Shamer, a girl named Dina who's known as the Shamer, and she has the power to unmask the soul's darkest secrets and crimes. But when her mother is called to uncover the truth about a bloody triple murder, Dina must come to terms with her shamer's eyes or let her mother fall prey to the vicious and revolting dragons of Dunark. And the worst dragon of all is human. So that just sounds really cool. That sounds like a lot of fun. I love stories about characters who have these like incredible powers but are sort of like ashamed of them, especially powers like this that allow them to kind of like look into the darkest desires, the darkest corners of people's hearts. I love that sort of stuff, so really looking forward to this. Next are a couple picks that I one of them could definitely count towards Garb August, and this one I guess could be debatable. Jewels of the Sun by Nora Roberts. This is book one of the Gallaghers of Ardmore trilogy. I'd mentioned before, I read a Nora Roberts novel last year that I actually really enjoyed, surprisingly so, which is why I hesitate to call this garbage, because I do think she actually does have some talent. It sounds a little bit generic to me. It's about, these Gallagher brothers who run the local pub, and a lonely American woman comes to explore her roots and her heart. The previous series I read also dealt with Ireland, so I'm not sure how much more unique this will be. But I found it in the store. It was cheap, and I had a friend at a writing group that I used to go to, and this was her favorite, this Jewels of the Sun. So I don't know, we'll see. Now, this was the true Garb August pick. I found Harold Robbins' The Carpetbaggers. This is a notorious novel that was published in 1961 about a guy named Jonas Cord who ends up in a relationship with this screen actress named Rena Marlowe. And essentially, it's basically, from what I understand, it's basically just an excuse to just mount constant scenes of sex and sadism and violence for 600-some pages. Harold Robbins, obviously one of the most best-selling authors in the world, wrote a lot of trash. This sounds very trashy. I was reading online, apparently this was heavily inspired by Howard Hughes. So basically, a movie mogul, aviator type guy just running around getting into all these crazy sexual escapades and violence. As it says there, the legendary masterpiece of money and power, sex and death. So yeah, I don't know. Heard a lot about Harold Robbins. It's supposed to be supreme trash. Sounds really entertaining. So we'll see how that goes. Something a little more serious now. This is And the Band Played On by Randy Shilts, Politics, People, and the AIDS Epidemic. This is a very famous nonfiction book about the AIDS epidemic, about the beginning of the AIDS epidemic and the spread and the political reaction to it. I believe this won a bunch of awards. It was made into a TV movie. Very, very well-respected book. I read a little bit of it 4 or 5 years ago from the library, but it was a little bit too long and too dense and too serious for me at the time. I wasn't really in the right frame of mind for it, but I do think it's important to learn about this stuff, to remember sort of where we came from and what us as queer people have been through, especially in regards to the AIDS epidemic, because obviously it's a far-reaching influence that's still going on to this day. I think it's important to learn about, so I want to give that a reread at some point, or give it another try at some point, actually finish the thing. Next, I have Gather Darkness by Fritz Leiber. I actually don't know much about this. It's a science fiction thriller set 360 years after the dawn of the atomic age, when a nuclear holocaust has thrown civilization into a chaos of superstition and religious persecution. And there's like a high-tech priesthood, there's a dictatorship, there's witchcraft. So it's about sort of a showdown between religion and witchcraft. That sounds really interesting. I don't know where I've heard of Fritz Leiber, obviously. I've read his Fafford and the Grey Mouser stories, and I really enjoyed them. He's written a bunch of novels, bunch of sci-fi, bunch of fantasy. I would like to explore more of him, and this is just one of the titles that I'd run across somewhere before, so I grabbed it, and that's a great cover, isn't it? The techno priests. that's sick. So yeah, I hope that's good. I also really want to read Our Lady of Darkness, but that one's really, really hard to find. So next I have a book of short stories. This is Snow White, Blood Red, edited by Ellen Datlow and Terri Windling. This is I don't know if this is the first one, but this is part of a series of anthologies that they edited that are retellings of fairy tales by famous sci-fi and fantasy authors. Charles DeLint, Gahan Wilson, Nancy Kress, Tanith Lee, Kathy Koja, Steve Resnick Tem, Melanie Tem, Patricia McKillop, Jane Yolen, Neil Gaiman, just lots of luminaries in the genre fiction field, and obviously I love fairy tales. I love anything that is a retelling of fairy tales, so I had to grab that. Next, I have another classic here. This is a very famous modern Russian novel, The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. As I said, this is a very famous Russian novel. I believe this was originally published it was written during Stalin's reign, but it was finally published in 1966 and 67. And I've heard a lot about this. It's a very famous sort of surrealist, satirical novel about the devil who decides to visit Moscow, and it essentially uses that as sort of a backdrop for this satire of Soviet life. It sounds really funny, really surreal and interesting. One of those Russian classics I've always meant to read. I did, I think, attempt this a long time ago, but I wasn't in the right frame of mind for it, so I'm looking forward to trying that again. I've got some John le Carre here. I've talked a lot about John le Carre on my channel. I love his stuff, and this is one of the few that I didn't have, The Night Manager, which is about an Englishman named Roper, who's sort of like this big, like, sort of crime lord, and he runs into this former British soldier named Jonathan Pine, who runs a hotel, and he basically decides to work with MI6 to basically take this guy down by sort of being playing a double agent and getting into Roper's good graces. I believe this was made into a mini-series recently, or a couple years ago, with Hugh Laurie and Tom Hiddleston. So that just sounds really, really fun. I love sort of like double agent kind of stuff. Good people working with bad people and subsequently like slipping into evil themselves. I love that kind of gray morality that I know John le Carre has a lot in his novels, so I'm really looking forward to that. Next, I have Sabriel by Garth Nix. This is a very famous sort of young adult fantasy novel about, I don't know much about it honestly, but I know it's about a necromancer. The back doesn't say much. I remember this mostly because my cousin and her family, they're all readers, and they're all really into sci-fi and fantasy. And she loved this series when she was a kid, and I remember her always telling me about it, and I never read it. But I read some Garth Nix a few years ago. I read his The Keys to the Kingdom series, and I enjoyed that. So now that I'm more sort of used to his style, I want to give this a try. And that cover art is just so awesome. So yeah, and it's about necromancers, right? I love necromancers. They're cool. So yeah, looking forward to that. Next, I have A Drink Before the War by Dennis Lehane. This is the first book in his Angela Gennaro and Patrick Kinsey series, which are, I believe that, yeah, they're two investigators, and each of their books deal with different sort of crimes that they end up investigating. They're given big money for a small job. Find the missing cleaning woman who allegedly stole confidential State House documents. But of course, there's obvious, as it says here, there's much more to this crime than anyone realizes. Of course there is. There's always more than you think there is with these kinds of novels, isn't there? But yeah, I've read a little bit of Dennis Lehane. I know he wrote Mystic River and what was that book? Shutter Island, duh. But I read his book, Before We Fell, I believe it was called, and I really, really liked that book. That was a really interesting crime novel about a woman suffering from agoraphobia, so I really like his writing. It's very, in the tradition of, Chandler and that. It's very, very hard-boiled, very atmospheric, and I really liked that. And he had a really good grasp of character, so and this is his most famous series. I believe this is also the series that Gone Baby Gone was adapted from, and a few other things, so yeah. Looking forward to that. I love a good crime novel. Next is Lincoln and the Bardo by George Saunders. This is a very, very well-regarded book. This is, as it says there, it's a Man Booker Prize winner. And this is about President Lincoln, and it's after his son dies, and it's essentially sort of exploring Lincoln's sort of psyche and personality. That's really all I know about it. I think there also might be gay themes in it. I've heard that. I don't know to what extent. But yeah, I've just heard a lot about this. I've heard a lot about George Saunders. He's mostly known for his short stories, but I believe this was his first novel, and people loved it, and it seems interesting, so I'm looking forward to that. Speaking of award winners, I have Blonde by Joyce Carol Oates. This was a National Book Award finalist. This is a huge, epic book, over 700 pages, that's all about Marilyn Monroe, her life and her psyche and her just who she was and as a person, and just exploring her life and her untimely death. Most people will probably be aware of this now because it's being turned into a film on Netflix. We'll see how that turns out, but I've been wanting to read the book for a while, so I think Marilyn Monroe is a very fascinating person. I don't think she was given a fair shake. She was kind of just seen as like a dumb blonde, but I think there was a lot more to her than that. And it'll be interesting to see sort of what depths Joyce Carol Oates sort of digs into with this book. So yeah, there you go. Then finally, I have Every Man Dies Alone by Hans Fallada. The sweeping saga tells the tale of a working-class couple in Berlin who decide to take a stand against the Nazis. So I'd heard about this a while ago because the story behind it was really interesting. He wrote Every Man Dies Alone in a feverish 24 days, soon after the end of World War II and his release from a Nazi insane asylum. He did not live to see its publication. And I think the book has an afterword that goes more into sort of the historical basis of it. He wrote this book in a mad rush. He had to like sneak the pages out. It ended up being this incredibly, very well-regarded World War II novel. I'm not normally into sort of like war novels, but it sounds like there's a lot more to it than just war stuff. So, and I flipped through a little bit of it, and I liked the writing, and it just seems really, really interesting. So I hope that's good. It doesn't look like it'll be a very happy read. I mean, that title alone kind of just says all you need to know, but I don't know, it should be interesting. So yeah, so there you go. That was my my latest haul at the Dangerous Book Den. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. Like, comment, and subscribe, and all that stuff. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.